Tonight on Catalyst.
Can petrol sniffers be saved?
What made me change? Because I've seen nightmares. It made me scared, lying down.
Hello, welcome to Catalyst. I'm Graham Phillips. Aboriginal health issues have been in the headlines quite a lot lately, and they're far from good news stories. Petrol sniffing has been something communities have had to deal with for a long time, and there's been surprisingly little research into the long-term damage this causes. Well, Australian scientists have got together with Indigenous health workers to design brain function tests specifically for Aboriginal people. Mark Horstman goes to Arnhem Land and finds some surprising results.
Petrol sniffers are often regarded as a lost cause, on a one-way street to permanent brain damage. Now, for the first time in the world, new research shows that the brain is more resilient than we thought.
It's now been 15 years since we first started this research in Maningrida. Back then, there was a whole bunch of people sniffing petrol in the community, and we tested their brain function and found that quite a lot of them were impaired from sniffing petrol. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Maningrida and see if we can find those guys and see where they're at.
20 years ago, this peaceful beach was the centre of an epidemic. Dozens of young people gathered here to sniff petrol. Albert Mileran was one of them.
Well, I was doing a lot of silly things, but this is where it happened, the problem. So much problem from those times of sniffing.
So when people were really getting into sniffing here in the 80s, how many fires would there have been along the beach? How many people?
Many times, plenty of times, many times. Probably about maybe 10 fires each night, every day, every night. Putting a tape recorder, putting a music on, standing around, just standing with a can in our mouth, in our nose, sniffing. All this. And we never thought of anything except just standing there, sniffing.
These days, Albert is a respected mental health worker who tackles substance abuse by using community employment to get people back on track. Many of his generation were involved in the early research into the effects of petrol sniffing. Sheree is returning to Maningrida to find the 60 people on her list. Most of them were sniffers, some of them weren't.
Really looking forward to finding out their stories and, you know, what's helped some people get better and why some people haven't after sniffing those years ago. Be good to see Albert again, eh?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Friend?
How you been?
Good.
Yeah?
Sheree and her team depend on the unique perspectives that Albert can bring to their research. There are competing forces at play here.
The Western view of science and the Aboriginal view of health seem to be quite different, and that's really a challenge in this sort of work. I think we're pretty far behind in our development of Aboriginal health generally, but definitely Aboriginal mental health. When it comes to petrol, the science doesn't have a good understanding of what's going on in the body and the brain. And Aboriginal people don't have a good understanding because it's new. So it's important to develop a bit of a model that everybody can start working on, really, and that makes sense to everybody and that works.
We haven't thought of anything except only feeling good about ourselves from sniffing. It's damaging your brain. In language, mamam.
The neurons in the brain cells are like electrical cables, and they've got sort of a layer of insulation like the rubber or plastic around electrical cables.
It's a layer of fat called myelin that enables the nerves to transmit impulses properly.
What the petrol does, it's fat soluble and it just dissolves that insulation layer. So basically there's no sort of protection around the neurons, and slowly the neurons themselves shrink as well.
And it made you feel good?
Made us emotionally feeling better, strongly, tough, smart. But after when it been emptied out, when the can been empty, well, that's how we got angry, got tempted, aggressive.
The messages can't get around to the brain and the body so well anymore. But the damage seems to sort of follow a process where The thinking, the executive function, the more complex thinking is affected first, and then the memory and the learning, and eventually the movement centres of the brain are affected. And that's when there's more serious impairment and probably less chance of recovery.
Well, what made me change, because I've seen nightmares, scary faces, or a face that has got a big eye and a mouth with got sharp teeth, all that kind of crap, out of my mind.
Hallucinations like this are the result of the neurotoxic substances in petrol, like hydrocarbons and tetraethyl lead. But petrol continues to have a corrosive effect on the brain even when the lead is removed.
Since leaded petrol's off the market, there's still a lot of serious damage that's been done. People are showing cognitive impairment and brain damage from sniffing unleaded petrol that doesn't contain lead. So those hydrocarbons are the ones that are sort of creating the damage.
Down on the beach and that?
Beach.
In his speech and his body, Ambrose carries the legacy of a misspent youth sniffing petrol on the beach. He was part of the original research and he now works for the Community Council.
You remember when they came here in 92 and 94 and did those tests, eh?
Yeah.
Now they're coming back to get you again.
Ambrose has agreed to be part of the new round of testing to track his progress.
Well, this is an infrared eye movement detector. The eye movements are very closely wired to the brain. It will tell us about the functions of the cerebellum and the basal ganglia and the parts of the brain that we know are affected by petrol sniffing. Good. All okay? Excellent, let's go.
While this method is effective, the equipment is cumbersome, expensive and difficult to operate, let alone understand.
Okay, now I will...
Even the old-fashioned question and answer tests can be confusing.
And now I'll ask you what country we're in. Maningrida.
The test is a list of 10 questions that require people to count, spell and comprehend instructions in English.
And now I'll just ask you to spell the word world backwards. Yeah, so the word world, so the world, spell that word backwards. Okay, that's all right, okay.
This test that Susan's doing is the standard test for measuring brain function. Now, it's designed to be challenging, but when it uses concepts that aren't from your culture, in a language you don't normally speak, then it's almost impossible for it to work effectively.
What that means is that when a lot of people from communities come in with a mental health problem or with impairment from something, it just goes undetected. People end up in high rates in psych hospitals and also in the prison system, and there's no appropriate strategies to identify if people have a problem and also, what treatment they actually need.
What's needed is a valid test of brain function that doesn't rely on language and uses familiar everyday objects. All along, the answers were right in front of them, part of everyday activities such as card games and sport.
Get the pen and touch it on the ball and it will change to the next one. Yep.
Well, the beauty of a test like this is that it's portable. An Aboriginal health worker can administer this test in a remote location and access meaningful information.
Equipped with their new test, Sheree and her team can expand the scope of their research.
So as soon as the card turns over, hit that K as fast as you can.
It's a computer game that tests cognitive functions like memory and attention.
Excellent. Getting good, hardly any mistakes.
They're building on the remarkable results of their first study, which when published 2 years ago, got less attention than it deserved.
Hard one, that one, eh? Good, you got it. Our study was the first study to show that some of the brain dysfunction caused by petrol sniffing was recoverable with abstinence. So we followed people up 2 years after they stopped sniffing, and a lot of the impairment they showed when they were sniffing recovered 2 years after they'd stopped.
So brain damage that was assumed to be permanent wasn't in fact permanent?
No, some of the brain damage recovered. Those guys who'd been sniffing for longer had less recovery. Once the cerebellum seems to be damaged, it may be that there's less chance of recovery.
Nevertheless, it's the world's first clinical evidence that the brain can recover if petrol sniffing stops early enough. But that can be a tricky public health message to communicate.
I guess believing that you can sniff petrol and then get better can be a dangerous message, because people can actually die the first time they sniff petrol because there's not enough oxygen getting to the brain, or people have died from a heart attack from sniffing petrol.
That gave us something that...
Albert says he feels like he's directing traffic sometimes, steering people away from substance abuse and towards an active life. He knows from personal experience the extraordinary talents of the human brain to restore itself.
It can heal. You can heal it back. You can bring it back. Even though one little part of the circle that are gone, they still can think.
How do you feel now? How does your body feel now?
Strong. I feel more healthier, more stronger than before.